Hello, I am the Proper Dab Guy.
And I'm Mary Jane Macy, and welcome
To the Proper Dab Session.
Ladies and gentlemen, the cannabis community needs people like our guest today. Without people like our guest today, we would not have the laws that we have. And the laws that we have would be dismantled before you can say dismantle. Okay? That's what I'm trying to tell you. Ladies and gentlemen, this man today is a cannabis community hero. Okay? Let me tell you what he's done. Since 1998, he fought for the legalization as a legislator to legalize cannabis. That might have came out all wrong, who knows, but you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. So, here in Maine, he's a hero, and he's a hero all across the world in the cannabis community, and I'll explain why. Because other states and other countries look at, what is Maine doing? What did they do? And then they copy it. So he's a Navy veteran that fought for our country. He's a legislator that served rigorously for the cannabis community. And without further ado, I want to introduce to you Eddie DuGay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Eddie, let me ask you, what made you, it was very hard to do those at those times. It was political suicide almost, the approach you took. So let me ask you something. Very serious question here. What gives you the audacity to jeopardize your career for such a cause?
A lot of legislators, there's two kind of legislators. Legislators that just want to set policy and pass laws and rules and regulations to control, the citizens of the state of Maine. Then you have legislators that really want to go back home and meet with the constituents and support what the constituents want. So I came from an area down east that, medical marijuana was popular, but it hadn't been legalized yet. It had been decriminalized on two different occasions, but hadn't been legalized. I also had the opportunity to serve on the Health and Human Services Committee right in my first year, my first session of the Maine legislature. There I was sitting there, and the legislation showed up. I had a mentor there at the time. At that time, he was a state representative, Stan Jazowski, who later became a senator. But Stan was the one that really set the whole idea into motion. And I'm sitting on a committee with 13 of us, and 4 of us were affiliated with medical marijuana. So we knew we were going to have a pretty solid vote coming out of committee. At least it was going to be 9-4. And then through the deliberations, and then there's two ways, when I look back on the history of that legislation in 1998, 1999, there's two ways that might have gone, but research hasn't given me the solid answers yet, but I'll certainly look into that. But I'll also be reaching out to Stan Zazovsky to find out mine from his memory, how it rolled out. I do remember passing out of committee. I remember it passing in the House and Senate, and the governor signing it. But then I believe it went out to the Maine citizens as a referendum vote. It was like question number 2. And of course, back then, who knows what's going to happen? What are the citizens of Maine? What are they going to do? How are they going to vote on this? They're going to support this, because when you put something out to referendum, it's a big risk. Because if it had come back and we had failed, you'd be set back another 2 or 3 decades before you could even launch legislation like this.
Wow.
So when it went out, it came back with almost 62% of the vote supporting medical marijuana in the state of Maine. At that particular time, we had an attorney general who really didn't even want to implement the program even after the Maine citizens had implemented it, because at a later time he was going to be running for governor. So he didn't really want to be affiliated as the attorney general with someone that supported medical marijuana.
He didn't have the guts you had.
That's right. And if you think about it, it was 22 years ago.
22 years, yeah.
I mean, 22 years ago is a long time. Even today, when you walked in here today, there's still stigma around cannabis.
Right.
There's stigma around medical marijuana. There's stigma around adult use marijuana. The current rules and regulations that are trying to be written by the Office of Marijuana Policy, they still consider us as criminals first. So we haven't even broken through that stigma yet. So having something like that happen in 22 years ago,
24.
it's really, it's really precedent setting in its own way. And I've supported it all the way through. And I will continue to support it all the way through. And I think that the more I've been involved with the business now, because I've also been a lobbyist at the Maine legislature for medical marijuana. And because I know my way around at the Capitol, and having served there for 8 years, having been a lobbyist there for the Passamaquoddy Indian tribe for 8 years. Then after that, I picked up clients in the medical marijuana field. And I think it's important for people to know that when I first got into lobbying for medical marijuana, as a lobbyist, I pick up a lot of clients. It's not necessarily for marijuana or anything else. I mean, it could be, I worked on legislation for casinos.
Mm-hmm.
I worked on legislation for the Passamaquoddy Indian tribe. I ended up doing lobbying for the medical marijuana field. And at that time, when I first got involved, there were just 8 medical dispensaries in the state of Maine. All 8 dispensaries were located, the state of Maine has 8 health districts. So this, at that time, the Department of Health and Human Services put 1 dispensary in all 8 of the Maine's health districts, which is why you have one way down in Ellsworth.
Okay.
Because each region of the state had to be covered. So when I first went in, I was lobbying for the dispensaries. And because at that time, there was a real rift between caregivers and dispensaries, and rightly so.
I remember.
There was a lot of hate and discontent, and I saw it and I understood it. But when I got hired by one of the dispensary owners, the first thing he said to me was, "If we're going to keep fighting, we're not going to get anything done. We've got to unite. We've got to work together. If we work together, then we can go up against the bureaucrats, the rule makers, and we can win this thing." So that's when I met Catherine Lewis with the Medical Marijuana Caregivers of Maine.
Another hero.
Yep.
That we.
I mean, she's amazing.
She's been on the show too. You can go back and look and check out the videos that she's done.
She's phenomenal. And, I know my way around over there. And when I was sitting in front of the Health and Human Services Committee at that time, it was there, not at the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee where it is now, but on the Health and Human Services Committee, because the majority of the committee members there have backgrounds in health, like I did. Mm-hmm. At that time, we had 5 people living with us instead of in the nursing home. So we were taking care of 5 elderly people in our own home. So I wanted to get on that committee because I felt the rules and regulations for that program were just too much, and we had to throttle those back. Right. But when you serve on a committee like that, you really need to understand what's going on behind the scenes. All of a sudden, the chairs of the committees were saying, "Catherine Lewis, could you come back up, please, and give us another explanation on this?" Catherine, excuse me, can we get Catherine up here? Another committee member said, "Could we have Catherine come back up?" So I'm sitting there going, who is this woman? Because not only were they asking for advice or where she stood on something, they were using her as they were deliberating statute. So after about the second day of seeing that, I went over and sat beside her, and I said, "Hi, I'm Eddie DuGay, and I'm just blown away by all the attention you're getting on this. You're like the 14th member of the committee." So I wanted to meet her, And that's when, and that was my objective with the client that I had. I want you to work with Catherine Lewis. I want you to make things so we're all working together. And that was my goal, and that's what I did.
I just to elaborate on the tension between the caregivers and the dispensaries. Now, if I can remember correctly, there was a monopoly being formed by, I would say, Wellness Connection. A lot of out-of-state money coming in and trying to run the show.
Yep.
Didn't they have 4 dispensaries?
They won 4 out of the 8.
Jeez.
4 of them.
Right.
You know, so that caused a lot of hate and discontent right out of the gate.
Right.
And it never had a chance for everyone to acclimate and work together on the legislation, and I could see that, and that's how I went about it. Is next thing I knew, I had 3 of the dispensary owners sitting in one room at the State House in a break room, and then we had Catherine Lewis and other Dawson Julia,
Yeah.
another hero of the medical marijuana.
He's been on the show
world,
too.
On the show.
Maine.
He's been on the show.
Yep. And so we had probably 16 of us, even 2 of the lobbyists for the dispensaries. And we all sat down because then another hero was Deb Sanderson. Because everything that went through that committee had to be agreed upon by Deb Sanderson or it wouldn't pass. So here we were all sitting in a room saying, okay, if caregivers agree to only have 1 store, then we'll agree to do this. If so they were coming together and agreeing on things. So it was like, wow, this is really happening. So that hate and discontent is still there a little bit, but not as much as it was. The battle now is between the adult use industry and the medical industry.
Right.
And anyone throughout the country or throughout the world, please, when you start your programs, keep the medical programs separate. Don't let the regulators say, we can combine these 2. We'll still let you be medical, you be adult use, we'll combine these 2. No, that's not what's happening. Because if they do that, they're going to get rid of us. Medical marijuana in Maine in 2021 is going to report back close to $475 million.
Right.
Almost $1 billion, $500 million in sales in state of Maine medical marijuana. The adult use program, which just been up for like a year, they're probably going to do 90 million or 115 million. And the formula that the numbers present is whatever the adult use market's doing, multiply it by 4.2, which 420, that's what we do. And so they're marketing like that. So what's happening is the adult use arena, they want us gone.
Right,
Right.
because they want the medical providers'
That's right.
money.
So
They want the
at my
money
medical
from-
store, I mean, I haven't done it yet, but I want to let people know if you come to this medical store, not only are we 35 to 38% less on every purchase,
Oh,
we only have a 5.5% sales tax. They have a 10% sales tax. I sell a pre-roll right here for $10. They have to sell it for $18. Not because it's better or whatever. It's because that regulation that they built into that adult use program is where the $8 has to come from the purchaser.
And not just that, but if one of the main reasons I believe that you need to have a medical program is because of affirmative defense. If you'd be so kind to explain to the audience what a affirmative defense is, and how that is vital to have, like if you go out of state or something like that and you get arrested, where the affirmative defense comes in. I think you'd probably be able to explain it a little bit better than I do.
Well, if you look through the statute and even through the rules, the way that it's written is it's saying that as long as you participate in this program and you're following the current rules and regulations, and if you're a patient that's gotten you've received your patient card from a physician or a PA or so on and so forth, and that we're all kind of in compliance with what the rules and regulations are, then you pretty much have a waiver from any type of law enforcement, any type of having someone have you arrested
Right, like
or
prosecution because of cannabis.
prosecution because of that. And that language is all throughout the language that you're going to read in Maine statute, and they mention it in rules too.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of why keeping medical is really important because, like, you're not gonna. You can't go to another state and be like, oh well, it's fine that I'm smoking pot here in this state where it's illegal because it's legal where I'm from, so it's good. Yeah, no, it doesn't work that way. You have to have like that medical card and that medical program in order to use that.
And some states like Arizona, they when I went out there, and oh geez, I can't remember the year because I can't remember yesterday. Anyways, I wrote some comedy out there for 2 months. I left here, it was beautiful. I left here, it was -7 degrees. I got to Arizona, it was 83. I was like, oh, this is great, you know. So, where the hell was I? Oh, I wanted to get some weed, right? Well, I wasn't allowed to buy it, but they honored my card. If I was allowed to have it, but I could not buy it. So, and I could not bring it there, but I was allowed to have it. So you say, well, how can you have it? You can just magically have it? Yes, you can. And that's by having somebody donate it to me, you know? And of course, I found somebody to donate it to me. Oh, I can't help it that I helped them with their electric bill because I'm a nice guy, but, so I had it, so so I was legal. But I'm sure they probably updated that. That was a long time ago.
And of course, we do have reciprocity. We have reciprocity with New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, not yet Pennsylvania. So now, if you have your medical marijuana card in, say, let's pick a state, Massachusetts.
Okay. Well, they have medical too.
Yeah. When you come to Maine, to this store in here, you just show us your medical marijuana card from Massachusetts, and we can sell it to you.
Well, that's awesome.
So reciprocity is happening a lot, and vice versa. If you show them your Maine medical card in Massachusetts, you can purchase product. That's building more and more and more, and I hope to see all states doing it in the next 5 or 10 years, because it really, one of the biggest markets for Maine is tourism.
Right.
And
they don't call it vacation land for nothing.
They don't call it, So people show up here. We have a list out there of which states have reciprocity.
Right.
And so we just run the cards and put it through the system. So that's been really helpful for sales, especially down in the Kittery, York, all the way up to
Portland. Well, it's like down there,
And that whole area, a lot of their business is from other states.
And that's a beautiful thing. And I think another beautiful thing that I wanted to bring up, talking about Senator, I can never say his name, Jerzowski.
Yep, Stan.
I could Stan.
Yeah.
We'll call him Senator Stan. Well, I know he was very much involved, if not fully responsible, for a law being passed, patients being able to share with patients. And I know that that opened the door completely for caregivers and everybody, because that way, well, you can share with that patient, and well, they can donate you as a donation. And yes, it was like getting around the law in a way, but sometimes you have to do that in order to get to where you're at.
It's true.
And I mean, as long as you're technically following the law, I guess it's all good, right?
It is. And I was going to say, is there, in closing?
Well, there was one other thing that we did
want
to touch on.
No closing. There's no closing happening yet.
There was one other thing we did want to touch on, and that was the subject of regulatory capture. Like, you were talking to me about that before we started, and I found it very interesting, and I think that we should share that with our viewers.
There we go.
Across the country, across the world, if you're all involved in the medical marijuana program, what you have to look out for is regulatory capture. And what regulatory capture is, it happens on all different levels, all the, power industries, coal industries, the big guys, the ones that have a lot of money that can afford 3 or 4 lobbyists. They're the ones that get together with the regulators. I'm seeing it happen right now. It's happening in this state right now. So the regulators cozy up with the upper echelon, the people who can afford the whole thing, and they start writing rules and regulations
The
for the big guys. all of us little guys are just pushed by the wayside. But not anymore, because in Maine, Senator Craig Hickman, who is now the chairman of the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee, which is where all medical marijuana and adult use marijuana is heard now before that committee. As a matter of fact, this Monday, we have 3 bills coming before that committee.
Wow.
And the important thing to know about that is that Craig put 7 of us on what we call the Maine Cannabis Council. So there's 7 of us that's in the industry, including Catherine Lewis, Susan Maheen, Arlie Krause, she's a cultivator. We have Paul McCarrier, who probably knows more about the statute in Maine as it pertains to marijuana than anybody. And so there's a group of us, and we get together on a regular basis because last session, the committee members would have questions and they want an answer. They don't want an answer in 3 weeks. They don't want an answer in 2 months.
No,
They
want
need
it
an
right
answer
now.
this afternoon because we're voting on it tomorrow. So we were able to get together as 7 of us who really understand the industry, and we can make decisions really quickly. Because Catherine Lewis, she represents the medical marijuana caregivers of Maine.
Yeah.
So we got Catherine with Susan Maheen, who the Maine coalition, Cannabis Coalition. So we represent all the big entities in the state of Maine, just 7 of us. So
Right.
we're agile. We were able to make decisions really quick. And because of that, I loved it when the rules were online this week, the public hearing for the rules. The stakeholders, the cultivators, the store owners, the manufacturers, all of the people in this industry, which is close to 3,600 licensed entities in the state of Maine, 98,000 patients. But all of the members there have the answers to everything. And before, when the regulators would put up rules for public hearing and ask for input, a lot of people didn't even testify because they're working. Well, they got to pick the kids up at school. They're sick, whatever. They can't participate. But this time, they all participated. And the key sign for me that we're getting a hold of the regulatory capture and kind of stopping it, only 1 entity testified in favor of the rules. There used to be 13, 14, 15, 20 entities that would testify in favor of them. This time, only 1. Because we're smarter, a lot smarter. We know what's going on. And it's because of all the participants that participate. There's a big turnout of Maine citizens that are involved in this business that really get on and participate. It's a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing. And, there's people out there that criticize. They're going to say, well, see Eddie DuGay. Here's a man that, yes, sure, he's doing all this stuff for the cannabis, but why is he doing it? He has a storefront, he has a store. So is it for selfish reasons? Is it because I've seen people say things like that, not for you, but other,
Right.
other store owners.
Sure.
And so I'd like for you to set the record straight with these people and that criticize for that reason.
Sure. So when I worked for the 2 dispensary owners, after a while, I learned everything. And I'm a sponge when it comes to learning things. I do it all the time. I mean, I'm on Google constantly trying to learn stuff. I wish I had Google 25 years ago. I'm really smarter in the last 8 years than I've ever been in my life from Google. So I knew how to do it. I knew how to set the businesses up. I knew how to be in compliance. I knew how to run the show. And after I helped them open up their stores, I'm thinking I should open one myself. So my friend, close friend for 40 years, Maurice, we're both Navy veterans. And I could see when I was working with the other groups that veterans participate in this program a lot.
Oh yeah.
And when you think about it, when you see the slogan out there, more plants, less pills. You know, guys will talk about all the medication that they have, but when they start using medical marijuana, they don't need any of that.
Right.
So I saw that as a niche. And my son's in the military. My dad was wounded in the Battle of the Bulge. My great grandfather was a bugler in the Army, and he got wounded and got a Purple Heart. My dad had a Purple Heart. So I'm really driven by the whole veteran side of it. And when we open our other store in Chelsea, because we're close to Togus, we want to make sure that the veterans are going to be front and center over there. So to tell you the truth, I really enjoy that. If you go into the adult use arena, into the stores, it's very clinical. Everything's clean, everything's put away. You can't touch stuff, you can't see stuff.
Right.
Here, and then all of the other caregiver stores you're going to, it's not unusual for me to have a patient come in that comes in on a regular basis or has just come for the first day who want to come in here and talk. We'll sit here sometimes for 10 or 15 minutes talking. What's bothering you? You know, is it anxiety? Is it in the morning? Is it at night? Do you have insomnia? You have a problem with appetite? So we really sit down one-on-one, man. We get to deal with the patients on a very personal basis. And I love that because I'm an empath. You know, I can absorb it all. And next thing I know, I'll send them out to Reagan or some of the people out front. And now they're coming back on a regular basis. I might grab them some afternoon and say, how's that working out for you? Well, it didn't really work for me. Well, did you? I tried it for 2 days in a row, and I just said, no, you know, you got to do this, this, and this because we're experienced with it,
Right.
day-to-day interaction. So that's why I'm doing it. And we run a pretty good ship. We cultivate on our own, and we buy from a lot of other cultivators. If you go out into the store, I probably have 28 to 32 caregivers supplies in here, products, because that's how I want it. I want this program to be successful.
Right. It's not a thing of competition. It's
You want
a
it to
thing
work
of
for everybody.
That's
right.
Like yesterday, we had a storm. Yesterday morning, I called 5 different caregivers throughout the region, from South Portland all the way up into this region. You guys gonna open? Yes. Are you guys gonna open? Yes. So we open because all the other guys are opening. You tell me a business where you're gonna be able to just call up some other guys and find out they're gonna be open. I'm not gonna tell you.
Right.
Let alone, and these guys answer on the first and second ring.
Right.
This whole industry is about relationships, and I love it.
And that's the advice given to all these other states and countries. You know, we have an audience in Germany. We have an audience in Canada, big audience in Canada, and we have an audience out in the UK. And a lot of our audience in places like Indiana, we have, you know, an audience in Indiana, and that's the message. It's a relationship, and make sure, by all means, keep that medical and recreation separate.
And don't fight each other. Work together. Like it's so much easier if if everybody works to help each other, because when everybody's infighting, you're not going to get anything done. If the cannabis community is fighting against itself, then we don't have any time or energy to put into making cannabis something that isn't stigmatized and making cannabis something that's normalized in society.
Right.
Attend the trade shows. Make sure you start your own state or local cannabis organizations. Strengthen numbers. Get membership. Post on Facebook, this is how you open your business, or this is how you the following 3 strains are good for this or good for that. Just everyone participates in the program. It's so successful. Maine has the most successful medical marijuana program in the entire country, because if you look at the 5 or 6 states where adult use has happened in those states, they push the medical program right out of the way. They're gone. We're not going to let that happen.
See, that's because we have heroes like Eddie DuGay and
Catherine
Lewis and
Dawson Julia and
all of them.
Glenn Lewis.
Yep.
People who have
Harley
taken
Krause and Susan Maheen, and it's just loaded with advocates that all work together.
And there are
Right.
people who have taken time to learn from what's happened in other states and what's happened in other places, so that we can have the best situation for caregivers and patients in the state of Maine. And I think that's awesome because a lot of people are like, oh, well, just because it happened there doesn't mean it'll happen here. And it's like, well, yeah, it kind of does.
Yeah, it does.
It kind of does mean that. So, like, and I like that you guys like have all taken the time to learn from what's happened in other states to try to stop that from happening here.
And just like testing, I mean, we all want testing, but we got to have a benchmark where all the testing standards are the same throughout the United States.
Right.
And we don't. They're just everywhere right now. They just check up. So testing, of course, we want our product, we want our patients to be safe. And there's no data out there. There's no health data out there saying that in Maine last year, 973 people came to the emergency room because it had powdery mildew on the plants. The
Right.
data's not there. So you don't want to, the reason they want to come up with testing, because testing right now with the way they want us to do it is going to cost about $475 per test.
That's
And you could end up spending $3,000 to $4,000 a month. And the tricky thing in Maine, when you have a store in September, the outdoor crops being harvested. So September, October, early November, the sales in these stores is like a hockey stick. It goes just like that. And I've
Right.
seen the numbers the last 7 years in a row. I don't mind it because people are growing their own medicine. They're smoking in themselves. And the next thing you know, they give some to their cousin, to their uncle, to their friend, to their sister, to their brother, and everyone's content with it. But after about the first week of November, they're tired of it. It's just like if you've grown 500 cucumbers, you could just get tired of eating the cucumbers all the time.
Right.
So they come back to us. And in this business, they always say, if you can make it to Thanksgiving, you're going to make it. And if you make it to Christmas, you're going to make it. I don't mind that like that because it recovers. But they're not going to allow to have people grow outdoor in Maine because when we were at the trade show, we asked one of the laboratory officials, if you compare indoor to outdoor, how's outdoor comparing to successful test results? And he said, with Maine's climate, you're never going to be able to get positive test results for outdoor flower.
Wow.
Regulatory capture, because what a good way to get rid of the outdoor group so you don't have that hockey stick. So the sales are just like that all across the
Yeah,
top.
see, that's not cool.
And that's stuff you have to watch out for. Because Maine, I mean, some of my top strains this past year were outdoor. Highest THC level, 26, 28%. You're not going to see it if testing comes in because it just won't pass the test.
Well, there you go. And we just had a show, and we were talking about this.
About outdoor bud, yeah.
And about testing. And we were talking about the outdoor bud versus indoor bud. We have a video on that. Go and watch it. Go do it right now. Okay, not right now. After this. Okay, just make sure you watch it. Okay. Forgot the hell what I was saying. What was I saying? Oh yeah,
Talk about testing.
testing. We also were talking about testing, and I was talking to Glenn Lewis about this, and I says, well, I'm for testing. And he's like, why? I says, because there's a lot of bad stuff out there. I says, there's people that have dabs that still have propane in it, or butane, or whatever.
Yeah, butane.
Butane. One of those things.
Butane.
Yeah, butane. If it has propane in it, you better run.
Yeah,
Anyways, so, and there's stuff that has metal fragments in it, and there's stuff that has all kinds of stuff. So I was like, well, I'm for testing that. But Glenn pointed out to me that, well, there's no national standard. So how can you go by parts per million if you don't have a national standard? And then I started thinking about it, and I was thinking, well, why not, instead of having it mandatory that you test, you have the people, like you can test your own stuff as you'd like, and say, well, here, this is this, and this is my test results, because you could do a bulk test then, and if somebody sells stuff in your store, if they have the test results, somebody asks for it and says, here's the test results for this. And then they says, well, can I see the test results for that? And says, well, no, we don't have test results for that one. Well, then that gives that consumer the choice of whether they're going to buy the one or the other.
And even with labeling, we can say this product has not been tested.
Right.
We'll let you know up front it hasn't been tested.
Right.
And the other thing is, if you're going to work with concentrate manufacturers or any type of edible manufacturers, just make sure they have the caregiver card. Make sure they have their kitchen license. And just deal with people now that are above board and really trying to be in compliance. One other thing I got to say, and this is important, because in Maine we have a laboratory called Nova Labs, and they were at the trade show. Nova Labs is willing to come to your grow and go in and do an inspection for no cost. They'll come up and spend 2 or 3 hours in your facility, and they're going to say, you need to change this. Make sure that when you're harvesting your bud, you have gloves on, because if you touch it with your hands, you're automatically going to put bacteria right into the batch. So they'll tell you what to do. Use an HVAC system with this type of filtration on it. When you open the door to the grow, make sure you have sticky on the feet to take any types of germs or bacteria or anything off your feet or insects. So they'll come up and do that whole inspection, because they know eventually there's going to be testing. But they also want to educate all of us. And that's a big plus coming from a testing organization to do that. So we're pretty fortunate. And we are working with them.
Well, I would love to have you back on. You know, it's been a pleasure.
Right.
You know?
And because of regulations, we're not going to do the proper dab here. We're going to do the proper dab later at the house.
Right.
Because we are going to be following OMP.
And we're going to be reviewing one of Eddie DuGay's concentrates.
That we
we bought
purchased here at 420 Hallowell.
Right, 420 Howell.
Hallowell 420.
And we would
Hallowell?
put put a link in the description, but YouTube will take it out.
Yeah.
They'll take it out.
They
So
will.
they take it out. They took out homegrown healthcare. They took it off. They says it's a dispensary. You can't, have it on there.
Yeah.
But yet, I could put it to a porno site. I could put it right on there. No problem.
Wow.
Boom,
I know,
go right to the
it
porno
is.
site.
Wow.
No problem. You want to buy heroin? There we go, right there. But cannabis. So let's run away. Okay. Well, YouTube. I'm just joking. Don't
Yes.
cut me off. Got to kiss YouTube's ass now. Anyways, we had a great time with you today, and I would love to do more of these.
Well, what I want to do is organize for you both to come here, and we'll schedule Stan Zazovsky, who was the guy that put the golf ball on the tee and swung at it.
Gotcha.
And I look forward to setting that up for you, and I look forward to seeing Stan, because he's a good friend of mine, and he knows a lot about the cannabis industry when he was the pioneer on getting this whole thing
He's a
started.
fabulous person. I've met him. I had the opportunity to have coffee with him.
Yeah.
And it was a great visit. I was starry eyed. It was just like when you see a star right in front of you, and
Yeah.
I was like, wow,
Yeah.
I'm in the presence of greatness here.
Yeah.
And I'm in the presence of greatness here. And I'm in the presence of goodness here. No, she's greatness too.
Goodness is enough. It's fine.
Anyways,
It's been a pleasure.
it's been a pleasure, and thank you so
Yeah,
much.
it's good to see you.
And you.
Okay.
And thank you, and
Cheerio.
cheerio. Oh, so wasn't that a blast? Very informative indeed. Now, I want to let you know that we're going to have our next show is going to be with Fred Kessler from Force Crafters. Now, he's going to bring a little New Jersey attitude to the show. He's a wonderful man, and you'll just love him. Okay, and after that, our guest is going to be Tony Bennett. That's right, you heard me right. Tony Bennett from, it's not the singer, not that Tony Bennett, the other Tony Bennett, the one that's had this show Down East Dickering with on the History Channel, where he'll be on the show. And he's a blast, and he's a bunch of fun, and you'll just love it. Okay, now, so we couldn't do our proper dab over there at the, at the building over there because, well, you're not allowed. It's against the law there. So I'm doing the proper dab here. for that show or this show, or you know what I'm saying. Okay. Oh, dear God. There we go. So, make sure that you like, subscribe, and ring that little bell thingy. That's it. Oh, and share. See, Mary Jane Macy usually does this, and she couldn't be with us at the end of the show, you know, today. So I had to do this myself. Oh dear God. Anyways, here we go. Bell Scott Bishop, what do we always say? Cloud 24. Wow. I'm in a bell ringer. One of the best you ever come across. I say that every time. Don't you live for the bell ringers? Anyways, don't forget to share our stuff. Cheerio.
Making out live entertainment. It's your boy Afterlife, let's get it. It's one of them smoking songs, light 'em if you got 'em. I sit here reminiscing, my mind's off in the days. In a meditative state because I'm smoking the haze. Be in a medicated state if you chillin' in Maine. I'm ready to blaze, I'm taking massive hits to the brain. Lungs are collapsing and suddenly I'm gasping for air. Tried to stand up, I barely made it out of my chair. I'm just sitting here stone, not a care in the world. My neurological patterns, they just took off in the world. Mind's racing as I'm racing to the bathroom to hurl. Should've known not to take the dab the size of a pearl. That motherfucker straight rocked me as I'm starting to sweat. I start to regret, except when they already hit. But I'm blazing, it's amazing how I'm full of motivation. Cultivating all my lyrics like I do my medication. Put the blunt up in rotation, rise to any situation. Blowing smoke up into spaces, I embrace the derpy taste of what's good.